musicians wanted to genuinely be controversial, why not make a song about redistributing wealth and property? That would be a really controversial song. Obviously, that's not a song that would ever be played on the radio, not a song that would ever be allowed to reach the ears of the mainstream population, because that is not a theme in a song that is allowed to exist in our minds. And we are not allowed to consider the concept of, wait, there is a minuscule amount of people that have hoarded the majority of property and money on our planet, and they are not really sharing it with anyone else. And do they really have the right to hoard all of this money and property? And is this fair? And are we okay with that? Our mind is not even allowed to go there and to think whether that is a good idea or not. And I do believe that, it's a very random example that I'm giving, but you can totally, if you're a good artist, if you are a talented artist, you can definitely make a song about that and make it a hit.
I can't get myself into that left-wing conspiracy theory mindset. I don't know why. I am not morally opposed to land redistribution. It could be a very positive thing for Canada. It could be a very positive thing for Greece, the same way it was a positive thing for South Korea and Cambodia. But what I'm opposed to is the left-wing rhetoric about land redistribution. Land redistribution does not create a more equal society. What land redistribution demonstrates to us is the naked, natural fact of how inequality emerges from equal starting conditions again and again and again. Not here to debate whether or not redistribution of land ownership could become a top 10 hit record. It's a great idea. Shout out to Kristen Leo. Make it happen. We started drafting lyrics for hits. We were like, hey, we can take the beat from WAP and we can record new lyrics on it talking about redistribution of land ownership. Why not you, Kristen? Step up. Get on the mic. It doesn't even have to be a parody. You can do a deadpan serious song on redistribution of land ownership. We're not here to debate whether or not there's a conspiracy in the music industry that would prevent you from having a hit song about redistribution of land ownership. I can't get myself into that left-wing conspiracy theory mindset. I don't know why. In fact, I kind of suspect that Grimes might come out with a song on exactly that topic in the next 6 months. I think there are plenty of left-wing artists who've tried. When there were people like Bob Dylan, there have been some examples in the past. There's been some John Lennon songs, at least that radical, but that were hit songs. So it's a weak argument. We're not here to talk about land redistribution as a musical theme in the music industry. We're here to talk about land redistribution as such. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, not my first video made on this topic. Maybe the fourth, maybe the fifth. It would be very hard for me to put together a playlist of all the times talking about this because it came up in passing when I was talking about other subjects. Any super fans of the photographic memory, send in suggestions and we can put together a playlist. Not the first video made a topic, and this is not going to be the last. People keep asking about this, I think for a really good reason. Redistribution of land ownership is fundamentally pro-capitalist, and yet it is misapprehended by shallow, self-indulgent, poorly educated people like Kristen Leo as if it were anti-capitalist. And that makes it interesting. Even if it were a terrible idea, that really makes it very interesting and worth talking about. And you know what, as it happens, it's not such a terrible idea. It really is worth talking about, and it's worth learning from empirical examples in the real history of the world. South Korea is as pro-American and pro-capitalist as it gets. Okay, now I got to put it in an edit. Land redistribution was a crucial aspect of the transition from the Japanese occupation period to the pro-American period thereafter when they were liberated from Japan. 100% pro-capitalist in principle and in practice. Cambodia. You ever heard of this small country in Southeast Asia, Cambodia? Land redistribution was not part of communism in Cambodia. Communism is about centralizing the ownership of the means of production. You heard of this, right? Communism took land ownership away from everyone. And in many cases, the poor suffered much more than the rich when the land was taken away. Babe, you got the book? This is a fantastic book I haven't read yet, but I heard a long interview with the author. Recommend this book. I recommend it unread on the basis of the interview, but I bought a copy. That's the tragic, terrible history of what happened when the Communist Party in China took land ownership away from everyone. When they lost faith in communism in Cambodia, when they lost faith in the centralized ownership of the means of production, when communism broke down and fell to pieces after more than 1 million people died, maybe it's more than 2 million, topic for another video, what did they do? They took parcels of the land and they handed it out to you and you and you and you. In theory, everybody in the country got a parcel of land and became a landowner and a farmer. Do you think that's the end of the story? Do you think we can just hit stop and say, and that's it? South Korea solved all of its problems forever. There were never poor people in South Korea ever again. There were never poor people and rich people. There was no inequality because they redistributed land. Do you think that's what happened in Cambodia? Do you think yes? And when I lived in Cambodia, there were no poor people and there were no rich people and nobody oppressed them because they redistributed land. No. What I'm fighting against here is not one simple misconception, but the habit of mind that resists engaging in a full life cycle analysis, right? The left-wing mind insists on saying, if you just take away land from the rich and give it to the poor, problem solved, end of story. There's a refusal to think ahead as several more dominoes fall in sequence. There's a refusal to think ahead step by step over the next few years, over the next few decades, over the next few generations. What are the consequences? And again, it's not all hypothetical. What were the consequences in South Korea? What were the consequences in Cambodia? And guess what? To quote ODB, this ain't something new that just came out of nowhere. No! This is something old. It's in Aristotle. It's in the Hebrew Bible. Both Aristotle and the Old Testament contain discussions of how to cope with the fact that with time, even if you distribute land equally to everyone, land ownership will become more and more unequal. Meaning what? A small number of farmers become wealthier and wealthier and buy up the land of the larger number of farmers who get poorer and poorer. There are winners and losers, even if you regard winning and losing as random and arbitrary and not linked to your own personal virtue in any way. In agriculture especially, this tends to be the case. Some people just make decisions that result in them wanting to opt out of farming. They decide, hey, you know what? I'd rather sell my farm, take this money and pay for university tuition so I can become a dentist. Or they say, I'm going to take my farm, I'm going to go to the bank and ask for a loan so that my own son can go to university and become a dentist and get out of farming. That's maybe the happiest way that poor people end up losing their land and the rich take over. There are so many more unhappy possibilities. Someone decides, hey, you know what? Too many people are already farming mangoes. There's no money in mango farming. I'm going to cut down my mango trees and start farming garlic. I can make way more money for farming garlic. Little do they know, there's a new free trade agreement between Thailand, Cambodia, and China. All of a sudden, Chinese garlic enters the market. The value of garlic locally goes down. Chinese garlic is 1/10 the price of locally farmed garlic within Thailand and Cambodia. Something totally out of your control, something you didn't foresee coming. And of course, with agriculture, ultimately, it is man against the sun, man against the seasons, man against the rain clouds and the weather. Some people are lucky and some people are unlucky, even without getting into the fact that, yes, some people become alcoholics, some people become gamblers, some people are stupid or just don't have the knack for farming that other people have. So there are winners and losers. If you start with a map divided into cute little squares of equal sized plots of land, and you give everyone an equal piece of land, within just a few years, within just 5 years, just think as the dominoes fall. A few people make bad bets, a few people make bad decisions, a few farmers go broke, and then other farmers buy their land. There you go. The successful farmer in 1 year can double the size of his land. Within 5 years, may have 10 times, 20 times as much land as the other farmers. And one by one, there are other farmers going bankrupt. When I was working in Cambodia, I did research on people who came down with serious illnesses, including tuberculosis. There were people who sold all their farmland just to have access to medical care because they were very slowly dying of tuberculosis. Most forms of tuberculosis, they don't kill you quick. So you have, one family that came down with tuberculosis, they end up bankrupt and landless. And there's another family, let's say they weren't any better at farming, just the luck of the draw, they didn't get TB, and they end up doubling the amount of land they have. And in the real world, if we were to redistribute land ownership here in Canada right now, there are huge corporations like Cargill that can come along and say, hey, this is a cute little plot of land you got here. What's your plan? You're going to build a log cabin? You're going to build a hut? You're going to spend 10, 20 years of your life trying to get some pear trees to grow fruit and maybe earn back the cost of the investment in building the log cabin? Maybe. If you sell your land to us, we're this huge heartless corporation, we can do mass monocrop agriculture. We can use the land more efficiently, more profitably. You can move to Vancouver, move into a condominium, maybe put yourself through school and become a dentist. You can have very rapidly, if you redistribute land ownership in a mature economy like Canada, a huge percentage of the people you give land to will give that land away. They will sell it to a corporation that can do mass monocrop agriculture, that has the technology and the organization to do large-scale, dehumanizing, not at all quaint, commercially competitive agriculture. And also people will just turn around and hand it to the bank. They'll say, oh, great, thanks for this plot of land, but I always wanted to be a barber, so I'm going to, offer this as collateral to the bank, and then I'm going to move to the city and open my barber shop, or whatever the hell it is they want to do. These are fundamental reasons why pretty much all governments in the Western world look at redistributing income, redistributing money, redistributing access to opportunities like scholarships to go to university for free, instead of redistributing land ownership, because incredibly few people have the chutzpah, frankly, to go out and work their fingers to the bone trying to make a plot of land even feed themselves, let alone profitable and effective in feeding the whole society. How many of you in the audience really want to go back to school? And many of you might want to go back to school to study Aristotle, now that I've told you this fascinating thing about him, but you probably don't want to go back to Texas A&M. You probably don't want to study the hard science of agriculture and put yourself through the paces of learning how to take dirt and rock and turn it into a profitable farm. It's not easy. I say again, I am not morally opposed to land redistribution. It could be a very positive thing for Canada. It could be a very positive thing for Greece, the same way it was a positive thing for South Korea and Cambodia. But what I'm opposed to is the left-wing rhetoric about land redistribution. Land redistribution does not create a more equal society. What land redistribution demonstrates to us is the naked, natural fact of how inequality emerges from equal starting conditions again and again and again. That's why even Aristotle and even the Old Testament talked about land redistribution as something you'd have to do every 50 years or every 10 years or every 5 years if you really wanted to have an equal society. But what kind of equal society do you really want to have? Even Aristotle was more sophisticated than these left-wingers. Do you really want equality of land ownership, living in a republic where everyone grows their own lentils? Or do you want to have equality in political power? Is that what matters? The equality of political rights, the equality of educational opportunity. That wasn't too sophisticated for Aristotle to get his head around 2,000 years ago. Here we are in the year 2020, in some ways still catching up with Aristotle.
Dun, 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 dun.